In general, when the counter-sexual inner figure in a woman, the animus, is negative towards her, that takes form in having very sharp negative judgments about oneself. You are nobody, you will never make it. Men don't like you, they only want to have sex with you, but nobody loves you. You'll never find a husband. You are not really a good woman. Your life will always go on as meaninglessly as it's now. And these kind of destructive thoughts, self-destructive thoughts, which put themselves between her and her femininity and her possibility of relating to an outer man in a positive sense. And therefore it is a great progress in the dream that she wakes up suddenly and thinks, it's not me, it's that man, and he's responsible. That's as if she could in that moment disentangle and realize that those negative thoughts are something outside of her. It's not herself. As if she would say, it's not me thinking that. It's only something in me thinking that, which I need not to believe. Women like to do that double play to a man when they are in the animus. They brutally attack the man, or they viciously, with their tongue, attack the man. And when the man hits back, they say they are such a delicate, frightened little child, and now the brutal man is attacking them again, though they have attacked first. And so I always call that the woman having a gangster animus who uses the woman like a little girl and puts it in front, and one can't shoot down the gangster because he puts the touchy little girl in front of him so that one cannot shoot at him. And that's what women, they play at the same time. The touchy little girl who the man may not say woo to them because they are so uncertain of themselves, and the tyrannical man makes them even more uncertain, and the man doesn't listen to them and so on. And at the same time they themselves viciously attack by making chiding remarks or aggressive remarks to the man. If a woman has this tendency of playing the anima to her father, father's little girl, and playing the anima, she assumes a divine role, because animus and anima are mythological, or in primitive language, divine figures, namely they belong to the dream world and not to outer reality. And therefore, a daughter who is flirting too much with her father and getting into a too close incestuous relationship with her father generally assumes, has a certain secret inflation. She assumes the dignity of a queen. She assumes that every man has to be at her feet like father, like she managed to bring forth with father. And she develops a certain haughtiness, feeling to be something special above the crowd, and therefore she becomes unapproachable to ordinary men. Men who try to approach her feel she's a princess, but not somebody you can comfortably take into your bed and have an animal relationship with. You can relate to them, so to speak, only on a high level. And some girls who have that father's princess-like attitude, therefore, are in great danger not to marry or to have difficulties in relating to men. The first man a woman meets is the father, and the father has therefore a very decisive influence on a young girl. If the relationship to the father constellates itself negatively, the girl reacts negatively towards the father. The father might not be an evil man in himself, but the girl might not like him, or the father might be a difficult person. Then there's generally later also difficulties with men and difficulties to find her own masculine side. In other words, the animus, her own masculinity, is a problem to her. And such a woman also tends to behave towards herself as her father did to her. If the father was tyrannical, later, even if the father has died, the woman tyrannizes herself with ideas and opinions which still come from the father image. And so the detachment from the father and the relationship to the father plays always a big role in the development of a woman. The beginning of the dream tells us that she's trying to approach and to look after her own femininity. And at that moment, the father walks up, and it's not her real father, but it is in the dream called her father, and it's a chief of police. And that shows that the image of the real father has become within her a chief of police. That would be that she now tyrannizes herself with rules of behavior. In actual life, she has decided to become a good mother, and she forces herself in a tyrannical, harsh, authoritarian way to be a good mother. Her home, her children, and she and the family life has to be the way she thinks is right. But that's why the dream says it's the chief of police. The police is mainly engaged to look in a very collective, undifferentiated way that things go on orderly, conventionally orderly. And so the chief of police is that animus in woman who wants authority, order, behaving like everybody else, not doing anything shocking to everybody. And then the chief of police declares the woman to be crazy. So that would be a secret voice in her that whenever she follows her own feeling, something says, no, that's crazy, don't do that, you are crazy if you do that. Many people repress things within themselves by calling them crazy. The animus actually does interfere with the maternal feelings in certain women when they have not a strong maternal instinct. Then, for instance, the chief of police tells them that they should not get angry. Let's say a child misbehaves and whines and spills the soup over the plate, and then it is a natural reaction to get angry and to shout a bit. If it doesn't go too far, it's quite normal for a child to accept that. But then the chief of police says, no, that's not good education, the child will have a trauma. And then she swallows it and gets angry and does something much worse to the child. That's why in this dream the woman goes to the toilet and vomits. She obviously swallows too much, which she can't swallow, which she should not swallow. You vomit if you have eaten something you shouldn't eat, and which your stomach refuses. She stomachs too much. So I would have the guess that very often her children annoy her, and instead of howling on top of your voice, you are impossible brats, go to hell, she swallows everything. And children like strong reactions if they are carried by a loving undertone. Well, the classical example of the destructive animus whom the woman has at all costs to escape is the famous fairy tale of Bluebeard, where she gets into a castle where the owner, she discovers secretly, has cut up and slaughtered all his former wives. And when she discovers this terrible secret, she can only just with the help of her brothers escape again. So that is the classical image of the destructive animus. If a woman cannot escape these self-destructive and self-annihilating thoughts, it might even lead to a severe psychological disturbance, or at least such women who can't escape their Bluebeard become generally isolated, bitter women who have no men loving them and find no partner and live in bitter isolation, if not worse situation. It has to do with the animus, namely with that they allow self-destructive opinion, impulses, actions to rape their psychological personality. They rape, so to speak, themselves with the animus. I have, for instance, often when I have indulged in destructive thoughts about myself or about my work, dreamt of being pursued by hostile men. The dream saying those negative thoughts are not you, they are hostile animi in you, and you should run away from these kind of thoughts. They destroy you if you stay with it. The woman who is annoyed with her little boy spilling the whole soup, her natural feeling would be say, damn it, now you have again spilled the soup. And then the pedagogic animus says in her, you mustn't speak loud to your little boy, that's pedagogically not wise. Then she rapes her feeling with her opinion that she shouldn't speak up, she rapes her natural feeling. She rapes her feminine reaction by having an opinion that she shouldn't have a feminine natural reaction. I remember once I dreamt that a murderous burglar came into my bedroom, and I woke up with a cry of fear, and I went through what I had thought the evening before. I had had a very peaceful, quiet day before, which didn't amount for such a terrible dream. And then I remembered that before going to bed, I thought, the book I'm writing is all nonsense and I must throw it away. And I thought, I thought that. Then when I had the dream, I thought, no, I don't think that. It thinks that in me, and I needn't believe it. And I could disentangle from the negative thought. I don't accept it. And the miracle happens in our dream that by realizing this, what is that negative stuff in me which always says you are nobody and you'll never relate properly to a man, blah, 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 blah. That's not me. At that moment he gets up and walks away. It's as difficult and as simple as all that. The dream shows her, if only you can wake up and see that this isn't you, you can send that devil who gives you those negative thoughts against you away from you, and then you can develop as a woman. Jung once said, women are absolutely lovely and charming and chase the men till they reach the point of being married, and then they transform into devils and harass the man from morning till evening and so on. And that is because marriage is a being pinned down into a specific destiny and situation, and something in the woman resents it. Before you are married, you can dream about what you could do, would do. You can dream about marrying a film reporter and traveling all over the world, or marrying a rich man and doing this, or marrying a farmer and having your own farm, or whatever your desires are. Your life is full of possibilities. But as soon as you marry that man you love and you want to marry, then you are pinned down to him for better and for worse, and something freedom-loving in the woman resents it. And that's why generally these kind of negative animus, contra-sexual figures come up and attack them. And that becomes very often even worse during pregnancy, because as long as there is not a child on the way, one can still toy with the idea one might divorce. But if a child is on the way, then one is really pinned down for the next 10, 15 years for sure. And therefore, the wild, freedom-loving side in a woman revolts and attacks negatively. Generally, the poor husband has to pay for that. He's the one who caused it. He has put her into that pregnant situation and into that pinned down situation. And modern women then say, now I'm always confined to this flat, and I cannot fulfill my personality, and I cannot do what I want to do, and it's his fault. Though she wanted to marry him, it's now his fault. That she does as much as she can develop her personality. But she says, now I have my husband and I wanted him, and I have a child and I wanted that child, and that's all right. But that doesn't prevent me from developing what else I have and want to do. We have to do simply both. Continue to develop your independent personality and accept the earthly confinement in faith. Naturally, one can't have the penny and the cake. I often say to young women, look here, you wanted that husband, you wanted those children, now you can't throw it all over and go to the university and become a university professor. You have to make a compromise. But you can, for instance, study, do some studying in spite of having children, and prepare to later build up a more masculine career when the children are older and go to school, and there's still a second half of life where a woman can fulfill her more masculine desires, how to live. A woman should be educated and should have a career, but she should not be possessed by it. She should not be carried away by it. Otherwise she loses her feminine identity. But if she keeps her feminine identity, then it adds to her personality a spiritual dimension of activity, intelligence, willpower, and all positive qualities. Makes her into a personality. Jung was always very much for women studying. He said that women who don't make a career or study or do some profession have generally even much worse animus. They lead a seemingly feminine life at home as mothers and householders, but their masculinity then becomes something sour and negative with which they torture their husband. It's much better to occupy the animus, then he makes less mischief. A man could just talk with her reasonably, but a man just generally gets irritated, and then he can't talk to her reasonably anymore. When she kind of, in a childish, plaintive, reproachful voice, reproaches him all the time that he is guilty for all her misery, then he, having weak feeling, feels awkward and gets irritated, either doesn't answer or slams the doors or picks up the newspaper and doesn't answer, or turns on the television and sulks, and then she gets wilder and wilder. Women are great masters in keeping things hidden if they want to, and in societies where women are not allowed to rebel, they just swallow it all down and turn sour and bitter. And with us now it's allowed to rebel, and therefore it comes out more. Generally the man, if the woman attacks him with the animus, feels helpless and has a helpless, vague feeling that if he only could return her into the role of a woman, she would be right. And that's what gives him the impulse to just grab her, put her on the bed and say, now you are a woman, don't be a man. He expresses by that, be a woman, you are my wife, you are not a man. And that's what gives him that impulse. It helps sometimes. The German word for convincing somebody is überzeugen, to overgenerate the other. And one can sometimes convince the animus that way. I've known quite often the husband just grabbing his wife and saying, now come on, stop all babbling all that nonsense, and putting her right in the feminine position. Think, for instance, of a wife and she learns that her husband has an affair. Then her feminine feeling and her personal feelings are deeply hurt. And if she would react in a feminine way, she would dramatically express to her husband that she is hurt. Instead of that, the animus, who is the masculine side, said, such a thing cannot go on. We must either divorce or he must stop his affair. So you must set him a time. He must give up till the end of next month. This affair must be finished or not. You see there, this is talking like a lawyer. This is not talking like a woman. And if she doesn't even feel that way, her men friend and her woman friend will tell her, you must tell your husband that. And then she sails and she goes and she tells her husband, look here, this has to stop, this can't go on forever, I can't stand it, you have to make up your mind, talks like a lawyer. Now the husband only vaguely feels, this isn't my wife, this is a lawyer speaking to me. And so he explodes or gets sulky, or men very often, when the women come as a man, they become women, then they sneak out or they begin to lie. And that infuriates her even more, and then you have the classical marriage battle, which is all over the world, the same from China till Canada. You could make a cliche of it, and it's always the same exchange of words. But the woman doesn't notice that she doesn't express her feelings. She thinks she expresses what she thinks is her true opinion. But if you look at it, the sentence generally begins with, one cannot do that, one cannot. It's generally a general impersonal cliche. Such a situation cannot be carried on. One cannot behave like that. Such situations always end like that, instead of having an individual feeling reaction. There is no general rule. She has to follow her own feeling. It depends on what kind of affair her husband has, if she feels he needs that, or if she feels he's running into a disaster and she ought to prevent him if possible. It depends on 1,000 details, and that's why one cannot give a general recipe. That's normally an animus, because it's a general opinion. One has not, being a married woman, one has not to put up with that stuff. That's a general opinion, and that does not take into account the specific situation. For instance, the poor husband might have not wanted to fall in love at all. He fell into it against his own will. So why should the woman then be furious with him? She should rather look at him as being sick. If he has the flu, she nurses him, and if he has love flu, she won't put up with it. Feeling, if the woman stays with her feeling, then she can see the whole personal implications, and she can see the whole situation in a very personal and differentiated way. And then she generally can find the wisdom to handle it somehow. While if she falls into the animus, then she goes along with collective rules which make the man feel not to be understood anymore. What Marilyn Monroe has been to men, Valentino has been to women. He represents, so to speak, the ideal demon lover, where women are carried away into a romantic ecstasy and fantasize to be like the sheik in modern films, to be carried away by the demon lover into a romantic two-aloneness. Generally, especially if such women who are unhappy in their relationship to their husband or to their lover, fantasy therefore of being carried away and having a secret nocturnal love affair with animus and anima. Animus and anima are therefore very ambiguous, very dangerous inner figures, which have to be approached with great wisdom. They are the great mischief makers between men and women.